Apocalypse Rebirth. I report to the country. Introduction. Lin Li has been reborn from the apocalypse. Faced with the era of natural disasters, his choice is, report to the country. With the power of the country, deal with the apocalypse. 1. Rebirth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On October 16, 2024, at 1:13 p.m. There are still 15 days left until the era of natural disasters. A coffee shop on the street in Shuinan City, Donghua. The people around were whispering and looking at a man sitting in the corner of the coffee shop with hidden eyes. Just now, the man inexplicably began to pant heavily and his body couldn't stop trembling, not even caring about the fact that the coffee in his hand had already overflowed. The man's name is Lin Li. His eyes were full of confusion, looking at everything in front of him with disbelief. Even though I remember the last second, I still saw a chaotic battlefield and blood filled in front of me. In my ears were screams and roars, roaring machine guns, and warnings from my teammates at the moment when his throat was torn apart. Lin Li had already accepted his death. But the next second, I appeared in this place. Perhaps the scene in front of Lin Li made him feel too unreal, and at one moment he even suspected that he had arrived in heaven. Until Lin Li looked up and saw the name of the coffee shop. Super Good Coffee. Simple and straightforward, it doesn't seem like a normal name for a shop, but it is a collection of coffee shops that almost come every working day before the end of the world. Although working people buy coffee for themselves, it's similar to giving themselves 2 whips from a donkey. Is this a walking lantern before death? Lin Li mechanically twisted his head stiffly, looking behind him. The buildings are arranged in rows, and the reflective glass is dazzling under the sunlight. The traffic on the wide road is non-stop, and various shops on the roadside are operating normally. Men, women, and children walk on the pedestrian streets on both sides, and when they see the shops they are interested in, they walk in. A very normal picture. Lin Li was instantly filled with tears, because he had yearned countless times. If only the world could change back to this way. Hello, may I ask if you need any help? If you are sick, we can help you call an ambulance. The coffee shop staff noticed the abnormal situation and approached to inquire. No, it's okay, Lin Li calmed himself down. After the waiter left, Lin Li searched all over his body before finding his phone in the inner pocket of his chest. If this is the familiar city of Shuinan, have you been reborn? With fear and hope, Lin Li lit up the screen of his phone. Shuinan City, 23 degrees Celsius, sunny, October 16, 2024.13.15. 16. Lin Li's finally calming breath became thick again, as if he had truly been reborn. On the 16th, Lin Li repeatedly checked the time on his phone, afraid of any changes. That is to say, there are still 15 full days left until that nightmare-like November, not counting today. Lin Li looked up, fearless of the dazzling sunlight beside him, and looked at the top of the blue sky. The illusory clock had not yet appeared. November 2024 was the beginning of the era of natural disasters. On that day, a clock with 12 scales suddenly appeared in the sky, with no markings on the scales, but the hands began to move very slowly. This is a clock that can be seen all over the world. According to published observation reports, this clock does not exist in physical form, and aircraft can easily pass through it. People were originally wondering what this clock represented, but soon, humans understood. This is the bell of disaster. The 12 ticks on the clock refer to a whole 12 calamities. After the clock appeared, I was still paying attention to the sky and received my first gift. A huge hail. The sky, where the snow has not yet fallen, is constantly falling fist-sized hail. When people wake up in the middle of the night, either cold or disturbed, wanting to see what's going on, they will see a mess of streets. Crumbling traffic, damaged traffic, and stiff corpses. And the temperature in Shuinan City has changed from over 20 degrees Celsius to -60 degrees Celsius in just one day. And later facts proved that this was not an anomaly targeting Shuainan City, but an apocalyptic crisis encountered by the whole world. The first apocalyptic disaster. The ice disaster. The inexplicable sudden drop in temperature and continuous hail. In this sudden crisis, countless human deaths and injuries occurred. Most households did not store enough daily necessities for a month, and even if they did, heating was still a problem. However, the strength of humanity is evident to all. The global ice barrier alone cannot kill everyone, and the East has also responded sufficiently in a short period of time, transferring people and relief supplies as much as possible. On November 30th, the type of natural disaster gradually approached the second scale, and the temperature began to rapidly warm up to normal levels. At this time, in the Blue Star, corpses were everywhere in buildings and streets, but people didn't have time to organize or mourn them. The survivors began to pray to the sky, hoping that this was the end. But most people looked at the clock that had passed 1/12, showing concern. As expected, the situation began to shake as the Earth arrived on December 1st. The second apocalyptic disaster. The earthquake disaster. This is a natural disaster that poses greater harm than the cold ice disaster. The collapse of the building only took a moment, and Lin Li once witnessed a refugee camp drying up in an instant. The vast majority of people who struggled through the ice disaster did not survive the second month. The power of earthquakes is truly terrifying. Moreover, after the freezing ice at sea level melts, earthquakes can also bring terrifying tsunamis, resulting in almost all deaths and injuries. The third apocalyptic disaster. The Great Night Disaster. This is the mildest disaster compared to the previous two, just an endless night that lasted for a month. Strong people even try to rest and collect supplies during this month. Lin Li died in the fourth month of the alien disaster. It's not something like zombies that can't be killed. To be honest, these creatures are made out of nothing and lack wisdom. They just want to kill, and the creatures that appear from the sky and ocean are not powerful. A healthy adult with tools, even moving bricks and crowbars, can spend some time killing a xenon. Several bullets can also cause the death of mutants. Although their physical fitness is slightly stronger than that of humans, from the perspective of lack of intelligence, they are much more fragile than humans, and even mutants can strengthen humans, leading to mutual growth and decline. But the quantity was too large. Even more overwhelming compared to the number of humans still alive at the time. The surviving humans have already lost much of their physical fitness, haven't been exposed to sunlight for a month, and their physical functions are severely damaged and weak. In addition, their numbers are too small, making it difficult for them to survive under the tide of alien species. Lin Li died in the resistance of an alien tide. His neck was cut by the claws of the alien. Stroking his intact neck with his fingers, Lin Li's gaze gradually shifted from excitement to determination. Rebirth is saving the regrets of a past life. Since I have been reborn, I must change the future. Lin Li stood up and left the CAFA, taking big strides. After a brief moment of contemplation, Lin Li's goals were very clear. Report to the country. 2. Report. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lin Li's choice is certainly not limited to reporting. He can start selling his property, renovating his house, storing supplies, utilizing information gaps, and preparing himself adequately before the end of the day. With the memories of the previous life, even with a family, it is not difficult to survive the natural disasters of the first 3 months. But Lin Li thinks that's meaningless, or is the pattern not big enough? Lin Li loves his eastern country and has a touch of family-like feelings towards all his compatriots. Donghua is located in the eastern hemisphere of the Blue Star and is called Dongzhou because 95% of this continent is the territory of Donghua. It is not unreasonable to call Donghua a huge island country. Donghua is not considered weak, with a land area ranking 7th in the world and a population of about 40 million, making it one of the 7 representatives of the World Federation. But the East is not particularly strong, and it is difficult to clearly state its overall national strength ranking. However, in terms of public perception, it is believed that the ranking is lower than the land area ranking, and may even be more than 10 places. In other words, the strength of the East is close to the bottom. If it weren't for successfully mastering the key technology before the blockade, the position of the representative of the World Federation wouldn't even be up to the East to sit. To make matters worse, the East is not very competitive with the strongest country. Feiying. The East entered a truly peaceful era not long ago, and it was not until the beginning of this century that the self-defense war against the island flower ended. And the opponent is the puppet of the Flying Eagle, the supported neighbor across from the eastern country. Although its national strength and land area rank among the top in the world, this eastern country, which has only entered the era of true peace for more than 20 years, can only be considered in the middle and upper levels of national living standards in the world. But such a national environment, to some extent, gave Lin Li great confidence in reporting apocalyptic information to the country. The 100 gentlemen of this country have all been baptized by war, step by step moving towards high positions. Their belief in the country and love for their people stand firm at this point, firmly believing that Donghua is the world's number one. Undoubtedly the world's number one. Lin Li believes that after reporting the information of the apocalypse to the country, his outcome will not be much worse than that of a person secretly surviving, and the outcome of the country and fellow countrymen will definitely be tens of millions of times better than in the previous life. Moreover, starting from the 4th month, natural disasters have become more than just environmental types, with the emergence of different species. For Lin Li, it is also unknown what natural disasters will occur in the next 8 months. Relying solely on oneself is not enough. All of this guides Lin Li to make the choice of reporting country. On October 16, 2024, at 2:17 p.m. There are still 15 days left until the era of natural disasters. Lin Li did not go to the police station, but went directly to the National Security Bureau. To be precise, the gilded font hanging at the door read the Ministry of National Security. In a semi-enclosed small room. Do you know what you're talking about? Your current behavior has slightly violated the law of disturbing social order. Zhang Quan's mouth twitched slightly, and the patience and joy he had just shown and the thought of having contributed to him had vanished. Have any patients escaped from the nearby psychiatric hospital? Should I contact a nearby hospital? I am very clear about what I am saying, Mr. Zhang Quan, and I am willing to take responsibility for everything I say, Lin Li said firmly and forcefully. Then, he took out his ID card from his hand and walked over to Zhang Quan. I know what your inner thoughts are now, but this is my ID card. You can check it. In my past life, I have no history of mental illness or any criminal record. I am very clear now, very clear. Zhang Quan, who had already determined this matter in his heart, frowned again when he saw Lin Li's actions. His eyes were sharp as he gazed straight at Lin Li, but in the face of his intimidating gaze, Zhang Quan only saw determination in the other person's eyes. This person seems to be very serious about telling themselves about this matter. But how can I accept what he said? 15 days later, inexplicably entering the era of disaster. What disaster bells, what global ice caps, these sound completely absurd. Essentially, the purpose of the Ministry of National Security is to believe in what it has rather than what it has, and to investigate any reports from the public, no matter what. But now in this situation. Just the content described by Lin Li, if I record it in the action book, I'm afraid my superiors will think I'm crazy. Not to mention Lin Li's demand to report this matter to the department head, who will then report it layer by layer until it reaches the audience of hundreds of gentlemen. Zhang Quan felt that if he dared to report, he would dare to be laid off. The act of pretending to be a prophet has happened in the East, but the last time that prophet was on the internet. After the first prediction was successful, the country attached great importance to it, but in the end, it was discovered that it was just an accident. Once bitten by a snake, 10 years afraid of a well rope. And how can we investigate this? Turn on the time machine to ask if it's like this in the future. Faced with Zhang Quan's reaction, Lin Li was not surprised, and even said it was normal. If anyone said that the end of the world was coming, everyone would believe that the world had long been destroyed in chaos. Is the surveillance on here? Lin Li looked up and looked around. Of course. Zhang Quan narrowed his eyes again upon hearing this, thinking that Lin Li was worried that this false prophecy would be recorded. He emphasized, not only are the surveillance cameras on all sides, but the recording pen in my hand is also on all the way, recording every word we say. Quoting a sentence. These will all be presented as evidence in court. You can choose to go home obediently now, I won't mind your behavior this time, that's great. Lin Li breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing the words. Empty words without evidence, you naturally won't believe my words, Lin Li said. It's easy to prove my rebirth, and that's the correct prophecy. Lin Li took the ballpoint pen tied to the desktop, pulled out a piece of paper, and looked at Zhang Quan, saying. Mr. Zhang Quan, as long as my prophecy comes true, can you help me tell the highest level you can contact about the recording, monitoring, and my content in this conference room? Lin Li maintained an extremely firm tone from beginning to end, as well as the gaze that lunatics would not possess, which unconsciously led Zhang Quan into doubt. Are you really playing? What should I do if my prophecy is wrong? Zhang Quan asked after thinking for a moment. That would be great, Lin Li said. That means being reborn into a world without natural disasters, which is a great thing, isn't it? Of course, Lin Li said solemnly as Zhang Quan's face changed, if the prophecy is wrong, I will accept all the punishment and responsibility. I will be arrested according to the name of the crime you mentioned before, and I will not resist. Free, a forest of prophecies. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Okay, Zhang Quan nodded. Although he still thought it was outrageous, accepting this condition would not cause him any loss. Now that I am not busy, this matter will not increase my workload much. Afterwards, I can even be a conversation topic with colleagues, which is quite interesting and completely acceptable. If there is a 1 in a billion chance that it is true, the matter will be big. But if your prophecy is meaningless, perhaps it can be inferred based on logic. Even if it is correct, I will not directly report it to my superiors. At most, I will let you continue to prophesy until I completely believe you. Zhang Quan added. It is impossible to predict that tomorrow will be sunny. I know, Lin Li nodded as he began to record on paper. Tomorrow morning, around noon, Typhoon Suri will change direction and capsize a ship belonging to Island Flower Country, causing a total of 3 deaths and more than half of the cargo falling into the ocean, resulting in losses of over 1 million. This matter has become a hot topic on the search engine because of the dissatisfaction of the Eastern Kingdom with the Island Flower Kingdom, which is commonly referred to as God's eye-opening. Lin Li remembers it very clearly. Tomorrow afternoon at 2:30 p.m., singer Bai, who is currently on a concert tour, will issue an urgent statement stating that his throat is seriously inflamed and that the evening concert may not be able to be held as scheduled. However, he will be present and allow everyone to refund their tickets. The specific announcement, I remember the approximate content is. Bai is a singer that Lin Li likes very much, so Lin Li pays attention to his concert schedule because it is not important whether he sings or not during his concert. This statement was immediately ridiculed by netizens, and the popularity skyrocketed. Almost at the same time, the official account of the state will announce the change of Mr. 13's position. The high-level political system in the East is called Mr. Bai, which consists of 100 people. The smaller the number, the greater the authority. Once they assume this position, their original names are almost abandoned. During their tenure, regardless of gender, they are all referred to as Code plus Mr. Mr. 11 to Mr. 100 are simplified Chinese characters. The 10 gentlemen who hold the highest authority in the East are the traditional Chinese characters, namely Mr. 1 to Mr. 10, who are the cornerstone of the East and the true helmsmen who determine their direction. A closely related issue to our South Water City is that tomorrow afternoon around 4 o'clock, the tide of the Hongtan River will be even more intense than the 15th, with the tidal force being the highest in nearly 39 years. It directly shattered a wall in the middle section, causing the disappearance of 3 children. The children's names are. Because it's about things around him, Lin Li naturally remembers. All I can remember about tomorrow are these 4 prophecies. Lin Li frowned and thought for a while before saying. Subsequently, he picked up the paper that recorded these words and displayed it all around the surveillance cameras to ensure that they could record the text on it. Only then did he submit it to Zhang Quan. "You've done quite a decent job here," Zhang Quan sighed as he looked at the busy Lin Li. "I know you still don't want to believe me at the moment, but it's okay. The answers will be revealed tomorrow, and time is precious. I just hope you can contact your superiors when the first prophecy takes effect." Lin Li said. Okay, I understand." Zhang Quan nodded. Lin Li left. Zhang Quan glanced at the time, almost finished work, and walked to the front desk with a plethora of prophecy notes. "What did that person say to you?" "It's been so long," a colleague working on the second floor asked curiously. Zhang Quanjing was worried that no one would share this interesting thing, so he immediately smiled and told his colleagues the whole process. "I'm going, claiming to be a prophet. I'm a werewolf, and I'll kill him tonight. Zhang Quan, should we go play werewolf killing together after work?" My colleague obviously didn't take this seriously and responded with a smile. No, put this paper in the file bag and remember to stick the seal," Zhang Quan waved his hand and said. "On the other side." After finishing this, Lin Li chose to return to his own home. Both of his parents lived in his hometown, and Lin Li did not keep pets. He was the only one at home. On the way, Lin Li still couldn't resist buying a lot of supplies. Then he lay on the sofa, which had been his most comfortable moment for over 4 months. He is contemplating future plans. Lin Li looked up and hugged his head. Everything was waiting for tomorrow. He had already left surveillance footage at the security department. If Zhang Quan had forgotten, he would have gone directly to the city hall to make a big fuss. But whether it's online prophecies or these. The common problem and drawback of uniformity is that it is slow and uncertain, and it takes too much time for events to ferment until someone comes knocking on you. It can also cause unnecessary confusion and is definitely not the optimal solution. What is this? Lin Li, with divergent thinking, suddenly realized that there was a clock-style tattoo on his wrist. There is no scale, only a pointer, isn't this? A clock of disaster. When Lin Li carefully examined, he suddenly realized this. It's the clock of disaster. It's just that the pointer above doesn't rotate. I definitely didn't have this thing in my past life, it must have appeared after my own rebirth. Lin Li was extremely certain of this. Is it a pure tattoo or an additional gift for rebirth? Lin Li hesitated for a moment before reaching out to touch the bell of disaster. A simple touch had no response, but when Lin Li flashed past the idea of exploring it, he suddenly realized that the scene in front of him had turned into pitch black. Dida. Lin Li looked around and suddenly realized something. He was in this space and didn't have a body, but when he wanted to move forward or backward, his perspective would change. Is there only my consciousness here? When Lin Li had the thought of wanting to leave, he found himself still lying peacefully on the sofa, and the time he had just spent was passing by normally. After mastering the way of entry and exit, Lin Li entered the space again and began to search for the source of the ticking sound. Is it the bell of disaster again? Inside the space, Lin Li looked incredulously at the only strange color in the pitch black. A clock floating out of thin air. Unlike the tattoo, the pointer on top is slowly rotating. Lin Li squinted his eyes and calculated. At this point, the pointer is located about 3/4 of a circle, which seems to be the proportion of current time in the 24-hour time system. Clock. Is this my reborn golden finger? Why is it the appearance of the disaster clock? The rotation of the hands on the clock of disaster will bring disaster. What will happen to me? Can't it bring me any additional disasters personally? Then it's not a golden finger, it's a black finger. At this moment, Lin Li had too many questions in his heart, but no one answered them. The answer is likely to be revealed tonight at 12 o'clock. Lin Li, who had originally wanted a last comfortable day, became anxious in his heart. His consciousness remained in this space, observing the clock. Time passes by. Midnight arrived, and the pointer of the clock of disaster pointed back to its highest point. Dida, dida. It didn't stop, like a regular clock, continuing to move forward. But under the clock, a bottle of azure medicine appeared. For, the prophecy is true. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Lin's consciousness paused slightly in the space, and then approached to examine it more carefully. A regular glass tube without any packaging or labeling on the outside, with a cork stopper on top. When the thought of picking it up flashed in Lin Li's heart, the potion disappeared directly in the space. What about things? Lin Li widened his eyes and looked around. The medicine disappeared like this. The clock of disaster, in front of me, the hands are still constantly wriggling, making a ticking sound. There was nothing else in the space, so Lin Li withdrew from it. The appearance has come out. Lin Li looked at the glass tube he was holding in his hand and whispered softly. Put it back. With Lin Li's command, the blue glass tube disappeared directly into his hand. A few minutes later, in the bedroom. This tattoo and blue liquid are things that have been reborn with me. It's not an exaggeration to say they are golden fingers. The liquid smells odorless, with an estimated volume of around 100 milliliters. The taste is unknown and has not been attempted yet. The time when liquid appears is at the end of one day, midnight of the next day, but after its appearance, the clock of disaster continues to operate. Therefore, it is speculated that at the end of each day, something will appear in the consciousness space. At the same time, this consciousness space can only access things generated by the clock of disaster, and cannot access real objects, and cannot be used as additional space. Summary. For now, do not touch the first bottle of liquid with unknown origin. Wait for the next day, observe the changes in the consciousness space, and then make a decision. Lin Li looked at the information he typed on the computer, lowered his head, and finally played with the liquid. He nodded, deleted the text, closed the computer, and went to bed. That night, Lin Li slept very uncomfortable. Because the bed was too comfortable, soft and collapsed, giving Lin Li a feeling that his body was about to fall. On October 17, 2024, at 11:43 a.m. There are still 14 days left until the era of natural disasters. Ministry of National Security, first floor lobby. Finally finished working on the files, exhausted. Zhang Quan stood up from his computer desk, turned off the computer, and stretched lazily. He suddenly remembered a joke. You are an undercover agent who has been infiltrating the gang for over a year, being careful and cautious, but your identity has still been discovered. When you ask how it was discovered, the boss's answer is ... because every time you write a word, the title is square, the small standard song simplified characters are numbered 2, the main text is modeled after song characters are numbered 3, the first line is indented 2, and the character value is fixed at 30. It's all caused by formatting. Have you all ordered takeout yet? It smells so good. Zhang Quan asked with a smile as he looked at his colleague who had already started resting and eating at the corner table at 11:30 in the morning. Your question is the same as asking me, are you there? My takeout is all on the table, isn't it? My colleague, who was scrolling through his phone while chatting, replied with some amusement. Okay. Do you have any takeout recommendations? If not, I'll go to the cafeteria to eat. Zhang Quan browsed through the takeout app and casually asked. My colleague didn't answer me. Zhang Chuanbiao glanced at me at the beginning and saw my colleague smiling and looking at his phone with great interest. What are you looking at? So obsessed, your ears are selectively closed. Zhang Quan asked curiously. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the super neck. Do you know about Typhoon Suri? He was supposed to hit us head-on, wasn't he? But today, he suddenly turned around and headed against the big head, heading straight to the island flower country and capsizing a boat on their side. I am reading the sharp comments from netizens. Although I may laugh a bit unethically, young people nowadays are really good at manipulating themselves looking up at the same time, he explained with a smile. The typhoon turned. It turned well, but this generation of young people, also known as. Zhang Quan's face stiffened completely with a smile. Click. His phone slipped from his palm and fell straight to the ground, making a crisp sound. But at this moment, Zhang Quan had no time to manage his phone. Due to excitement, his voice seemed somewhat abnormal compared to usual. Zhang Quan looked at his colleague and asked word by word, Zhe, are you saying that the typhoon is turning? Did the typhoon cause the deaths of 3 people in island flower country? Half of the goods were lost, and it is worth millions. Yeah, you also got it. My colleague looked up and replied, but suddenly noticed that Zhang Quan's face was pale and terrifying, as if he had a serious illness. Zhang Quan, what's wrong with you? He quickly asked with concern. What time is it now? Zhang Quan's hands trembled as he tried to find his phone. After flipping through his pockets, he remembered that it had fallen to the ground and asked while picking it up. 44, Zhang Quan, are you okay? My colleague replied strangely. Near noon. Zhe, are you serious about the news of the typhoon turning just now? Zhang Quan looked at his colleague, but his eyes were flickering. Or are there really only 3 dead people? Is the loss really over 1 million yuan? Is there any possibility that the data is incorrect? Zhang Quan is extremely hopeful that this message will go wrong at this moment. Because if this news really comes true, what does that mean? The end of the world will really come to the Blue Star, a natural disaster on a global scale. Countless people will die. Everything that is beautiful now will disappear from zhaosuiyuan.com. That's right, Zhang Quan, are you really sick? Do you want to go to the hospital? At the same time, I was even more worried. I'm not sick. If I were his mother sick, it might be the whole his mother Blue Star. Zhang Quan started to restart the extinguished computer with his trembling hand, but because he couldn't poke it, he kept shaking with the computer screen. Are you trying to be fined for swearing in your uniform? Reminded a colleague. The sky is going to collapse. Who the hell will punish me? Zhang Quan sat on his seat and read all the news about Typhoon Suri word for word again. He calmed down a little and looked at his colleagues. Zhe, now help me call out the monitoring and recording of yesterday's meeting room with Lin Li immediately. Hurry up. Don't ask why. It's very serious. All right. Although my colleague was a bit confused, Zhang Quan's face and actions didn't seem to be joking at all. He quickly threw away his half-winded fan and sat back in his workstation, asking, I visited 3 people yesterday, which one is Lin Li? The last one, the youngest one who came near the end of work. Zhang Quan picked up his phone with a broken screen and began inputting the follow-up number left by Lin Li yesterday. After you call out the surveillance and recording, please help me call Wang Ko from the 2nd floor. When Wang finished work yesterday, Zhang Quan shared with him the story of Lin Li's colleague. Zhang Quan now needs him to testify with him. Dee. The phone entered a waiting state, but the next second, Zhang Quan's phone was hung up. No need to fight anymore. Zhang Quan lifted his head in a daze. I'm right here, I've already arrived. Lin Li stood at the door with a determined gaze and said to Zhang Quan. 5. Your superior has arrived. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. On October 17, 2024, at September 12 noon. A day had passed since Lin Li's rebirth. On the streets of Shuainan City, inside a car covered in pitch black. Notice everyone, all non-essential work will be suspended and awaiting instructions. The security building has entered a state of martial law, prohibiting anyone from going out, and strictly scrutinizing all those who enter. Protect the forest, I am now on my way back. Xiao Qi, drive faster. Okay, Mr. Yang. The middle-aged man sat in the back seat of the car, hung up his phone, crossed his hands and placed them on his thighs, tapping his fingers one by one. His gaze was fixed on the trees and buildings that were constantly falling outside the window, but he couldn't help but glance at his watch and looked up to urge him. The man's name is Yang Qianli, and he is a highly respected figure in the Shuainan Municipal District. On this large ship in Shuainan City, he is one of the helmsmen. Yang Qianli took a deep breath and reached out to rub the center of his eyebrows, but his brows did not stretch. A dozen minutes ago, while still eating, he received a call from the security department. The message conveyed to oneself on the other end of the phone was very unbelievable. Someone predicted that the end of the world was coming. Undoubtedly, Yang Qianli believed that this was a joke that was not funny at all. The end of the world. Why don't you let aliens invade? Yang Qianli is already ready to curse and catch the staff who condone this prank. If he dares to joke with himself, he must be prepared to reach the end of the officialdom road. But before Yang Qianli could speak, there was already a large amount of supporting information on the other end of the phone, and it sounded like there was more than one security department employee over there. They said that the young man named Lin Li had already predicted an abnormal natural disaster, and in terms of the details of the disaster, they all corresponded. They have evidence. These employees are all real names, and as members of the system, everyone should know how serious the consequences would be for their own future if this matter were to be false, even more so than that. From this perspective, these people should not dare to make such jokes on themselves. But if this news is true. Thinking of this, Yang Qianli's brow furrowed even tighter. What serious consequences will there be for the future of the world? Mr. Yang, there seems to be some traffic jam ahead, and the severity is currently uncertain. The pure black car slowed down and finally stopped. The driver looked at Yang Qianli from the rearview mirror and whispered. It's okay, they should be coming soon. Yang Qianli didn't open his eyes, but the frequency of finger tapping became faster, he said. Before the driver could ask who they were, the sound of the police siren was already coming from the nearby street and becoming increasingly clear. Follow the police car, Yang Qianli said again. Understood. The driver's pupils tightened sharply. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Something big is about to happen. Now is the era of the internet, allowing police cars to pave the way for one's own car will definitely be recorded by the public. And the license plate number of this car will definitely make netizens pay attention to this matter. Letting police cars clear the way is something that has been said to be taboo internally, as it can easily be misled by public opinion into abusing private rights. But now Yang Qianli does not hesitate to let the police car clear the way for him, which means that the situation has become so serious that it requires a race against time. What exactly happened? In the remaining time, suppressing his anxious heart, the driver remained silent and only followed the police car carefully, heading towards the safety building. Security building. In just a few minutes, the entrance here had undergone earth-shattering changes. The entrance was completely locked down, with live ammunition guards standing on both sides, scrutinizing all the people and vehicles attempting to approach. The black car parked steadily at the door. Where is Lin Li? Where is Lin Li now? There are also Zhang Quan and Wang Ku. Yang Qianli strode into the security department, and his loud voice immediately echoed in the hall. Deputy Chief, all three are in the reception hall. It was not the security department staff who came forward to greet, but the police officers. Take me over. Yes. When Yang Qianli pushed open the door, 3 people were sitting in front of a police officer. When he saw him enter, the officer stood up and bowed slightly to him before exiting the room and closing the door. Vice President, everything is ready, these are the evidence you need to see. Seeing Yang Qianli, Zhang Quan stood up directly and said. This is all of Lin Li's personal files. This is the surveillance and recording of Lin Li's visit to the guest room yesterday. This is the surveillance footage of Wang Ke and I chatting in the lobby after Lin Li left, with the number of the archive bag seal recorded on it. This is the archive bag that Wang and I have sealed. The seal has not been opened, and we are waiting for you to personally come and open it. The surveillance footage taken from the archive room to here is attached, ensuring that we have never exchanged it. Zhang Quan pushed the laptop on the table towards Yang Qianli. Wait a moment. Yang Qianli took a deep breath and looked majestically at the screen. He clicked on the surveillance and the recording was synchronized. Tomorrow morning, around noon, Typhoon Suri will change direction and capsize a ship in the island of Huagua, causing a total of 3 deaths and more than half of the cargo falling into the ocean, resulting in losses of millions. Yang Qianli held a printed paper document in his hand, which recorded the news broadcast of the typhoon by Qiao Bo and the official. Yang Qianli's gaze turned to the screen and he looked at October 16, 2024, in the bottom right corner for a long time. After finally reading all the evidence, Yang Qianli closed his laptop and stacked the documents in front of him. Yang Qianli didn't speak. He pressed the back of his hand against the person in front of him and placed his other hand on the table, gently tapping and scanning the 3 people in front of him. The tapping sound was light, but in the quiet reception room, it was thunderous, and the dull and oppressive atmosphere became even stronger with the sound of tapping. Zhang Quan and Wang Ke sat upright on both sides of the forest, their eyes complex and hesitant to meet Yang Qianli. Lin Li, on the other hand, met Yang Qianli with a candid gaze, and after a few seconds, he chose to speak and tentatively asked, Deputy Director, since you have a good view, now. Sorry, I was just thinking about something. You all know what this means, right? Yang Qianli took a deep breath and spoke in a loud voice, as if he had regained his senses. Before he could answer, he continued, if this is true, the future and pattern of the world will undergo serious changes. Yang Qianli reviewed Lin Li's ordinary file again and said, but Mr. Lin, if this is your joke, the consequences may be very serious, very serious. Please rest assured, I swear, this is not a joke, Lin Li said calmly. First of all, let me apologize because this matter has a significant impact, but it is too difficult to believe. I must be cautious and even more cautious, and I must also doubt you. This is responsible to all of us in the East. Please understand, Mr. Lin Li, Yang Qianli said with a slight bow. Before the situation became clear, Yang Qianli believed that he needed to maintain a good attitude towards Lin Li. I understand, and I also know the absurdity of someone suddenly saying that the end of the world is coming. Lin Li nodded. Therefore, the current situation is not enough for me to directly report to the 100 gentlemen. I need your prophecy to be verified again, which is just these few. Yang Qianli pointed to the file bag and slowly said, with the remaining 3 lines of prophecy written by Lin Li. 6. Fear is invading. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lin Li did not feel surprised or annoyed by Yang Qianli's persistence. This matter is related to the lifeline of the country. One pull can move the whole body. Yang Qianli, who has no divine perspective, accepts this information in a short period of time. Even if the probability is low, he must consider the possibility of collaborating with Zhang Quan and others to deceive him. Time is indeed precious, but if Lin Li keeps urging, it will actually have the opposite effect. Therefore, Lin Li nodded, but hesitated as he pointed to the 3rd point. The middle 2 don't really matter, but the last one. Is this related to the lives of the people or innocent children? Don't worry, I understand what you are worried about, but it won't happen. I will do my best to deal with it, Yang Qianli said immediately. Okay, then I don't have any other questions, Lin Li nodded. Yang Qianli stood up and gently said to Lin Li, Mr. Lin Li, do you have anything special to do today? If not, could you please stay here for now? Of course, if you have any needs for water and food, you can tell Zhang Quan and Wang Ku, and we will do our best to meet your needs. No problem, Lin Li shook his head. Okay, you can rest here first, I'll go out for a while. After nodding slightly to Lin Li, Yang Qianli stood up and left the room. Yang Qianli arrived at the back door of the security building, took a few deep breaths, and then took out a box of cigarettes and a stick from his pocket. I didn't expect that when I was still so restless, I finally quit smoking for a week. Yang Qianli made a phone call. Xiao Chen, let's temporarily ban Hengtan Avenue now. Let's talk about daily maintenance and repair, but don't do anything, but pay attention to whether any walls are broken when the tide rises. Notify me as soon as possible. In addition, arrange for the department to measure today's tidal force, and I need you to provide a rough result of the tidal force tonight. After hanging up the phone, Yang Qianli extinguished the cigarette he had only smoked once in the ashtray on the lid of the trash can. He walked alone to another room, picked up his phone, added his fingerprint and face, and unlocked Hongyun. Hongyun is the official software of Donghua, which is used for work notifications and arrangements within the system. Yang Qianli clicked on one of the group chats he had placed on top of. The last time someone messaged in this group chat was a month and a half ago, and most of the members in the group were at the same level as Yang Qianli in terms of identity and position. At 2:30 p.m. this afternoon, singer Ah Bai, who is currently on a concert tour, will issue an urgent statement stating that his throat is seriously inflamed and that the concert tonight may not be held as scheduled. However, he will be present and allow everyone to refund their tickets. After editing this message, Yang Qianli sent it in the group chat. Just as Yang Qianli was editing the second message, there was already a response in the group chat. Number 83. At Yang Qianli, do not send non-work matters in this group. If you have a personal hobby, you can communicate with colleagues in other software, holding hands, holding hands, holding hands. Almost at the same time, the state official account will announce the change of Mr. 13's position. Yang Qianli first sent the second edited message to the group, and then replied. Yang Qianli. Mr. 83, these are two prophecies. Number 83 did not respond in the group anymore, but directly chatted with Yang Qianli privately. How did you know that 13 was going to undergo a position change and was announced today? Mr. 83, I would like to ask, is there a possibility of this matter being leaked? Are there many people who know about it? Yang Qianli's heart tightened as he entered. Although job changes do not affect national security, such information is still strictly prohibited from being leaked internally before it is released. Yang, please tell me from what channels you learned about this news, and I need to investigate the root cause of the leak. Mr. 83, this is the situation. Yang Qianli explained the situation in detail and sent all the evidence prepared by Zhang Quan to Mr. 83. I spent a lot of time reading this information from across the street. By the Hengtan River, have you taken control? 20 minutes later, the first message sent back on the 83rd was like this. It's already under control, Mr. 83. Yang Qianli immediately replied. What kind of control method? We raised the cordon and checked the surveillance footage for the past month to ensure that no one tampered with the fence. After a while on the 83rd, a message was sent. The position is true, and the timing is also correct. However, concerts and job changes are information that can be leaked and cannot be called an absolute prophecy. The morning typhoon information and casualties in the island's flower country were all reported by their media. Although the typhoon's turn was unexpected, it is still difficult to convince them of the rebirth. Yang Qianli, I will always be by my phone tonight and will start arranging and contacting the top 10 members. If Lin Li's prediction of the tide tonight is also correct, please send me a message as soon as possible. If there is no response within a minute, please call me and I will convey it as soon as possible. Received, Mr. 83, that's what I think too. After closing Red Cloud, time had unknowingly arrived at just over 2 o'clock, with only a few minutes left until the release of the 2 messages. Time gradually passes by. At that time, the minute hand pointed to the low end of the clock, and with Yang Qianli's refresh, 2 messages popped out of his attention. To all dear fans and friends, we regret to inform you that we are looking for Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com because through the resolution of Mr. 100, it is proposed to appoint XXX as the new Mr. 13. The situation is now announced as follows. Sure enough. Even with the announcement of the 83rd, when he saw 2 prophecies come true again at this moment, Yang Qianli's forehead still couldn't help but burst into a cold sweat. He quickly calmed down and walked out of the room. At the door of the room where Lin Li was located, Zhang Quan and Wang Ku were already limp on the ground, their lips trembling. Only when they approached could they hear what they were saying clearly. Apocalypse, is it really coming? Only this little time. It's over. It's over, there's nothing left, nothing left. They have completely believed it. The fear that made their bodies tremble clearly controlled both of them. But Yang Qianli's expression remained unchanged, and his heart did not mock the 2 of them for being unbearable. Because this may not be considered unbearable, but rather human nature. Apocalypse. Countless deaths will come, everything he possesses will disappear in just a few days, and high-rise buildings will collapse in an instant. For ordinary people, this is a sudden diagnosis of an incurable disease with a lifespan of only 10 days. Fear is such a normal thing. Yang Qianli lifted his calloused hand, realizing that it had also begun to tremble unconsciously. He was slightly absent-minded. The door to the room was opened at this moment, and Lin Li, who was leaning against the window in shining sunlight, walked out and looked at Yang Qianli. Yang Qianli, have you seen the news? I see, Mr. Lin Li. Could you please come with me to the city building? Of course, I am waiting for this moment. 7. Telegram. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On October 17, 2024, at 3:36 p.m. 1 hour and 6 minutes have passed since the announcement of the position change on the 13th was released. City Building, 12th floor, conference room. The number of participants in this meeting is very small, and everyone's attire is not absolutely formal. But there is a saying in Eastern countries that during meetings, the bigger the matter, the fewer people there are, the bigger the matter, the fewer words there are. The 5 people in front of Yang Qianli are the other leaders of Shuinan City. No project in Shuinan City, no matter how you go, can avoid this small group of people in this room. The situation is like this, and the outcome will be revealed within half an hour, Yang Qianli said calmly, finally looking at the middle-aged person sitting at the front of the 5 and handing over the throne to him. Mayor of Shuinan City. Just follow your instructions, the mayor nodded solemnly. I believe you won't joke aimlessly. You are fully responsible for everything related to Lin Li. Understood, thank you for your trust. The meeting is over, everyone starts taking action immediately. The mayor's sharp gaze swept over everyone in the room, and he said with a heavy and powerful voice. Yes. Yang Qianli stood up and took out his phone, only to realize that several missed calls were displayed on the phone because it was not disturbing. After seeing the phone number clearly, Yang Qianli directly turned on the hands-free function in the conference room. Hello, Xiao Chen, call me. Is there something wrong on the other side of the Hongtan River? The group of people who were preparing to leave stopped and stared fixedly at Yang Qianli's phone. Their emotions were the same as Yang Qianli's, and even more serious. They knew the news for only a dozen minutes and were still digesting it, hoping in their hearts that it would be an upset. Report to Mr. Yang, a somewhat anxious voice immediately came from the other end of the phone. The wall of the Hongtan River that you asked us to pay attention to was really broken by the sudden and rapid tide, and the location of the break was also similar to what you said. In the middle section, even the gap was similar. And according to the testing machine we put into the tide in advance, we found that today's tidal force anomaly is only a rough estimate, which is already the highest of this century. More accurate information requires more time for measurement. It's really strange, Mr. Yang Qinli. First of all, let me explain to you that tidal forces generally do not change significantly within the day unit. Under its influence, there will be 2 tides rising and falling in a day, but the intensity should be the same or similar. However, the difference between today's afternoon and morning is very significant. This is very unreasonable. Is there any human factor involved? Yang Qianli asked in a deep voice. Human-made. How could this be human-made? Did someone forcibly pull the position of the moon over? The phone answered subconsciously. Yang Qianli took a deep breath. The most worrisome situation has arisen. All prophecies have come true. The apocalypse has really come. In the vast conference room, the breathing sounds of 6 people were particularly heavy at this moment, but no one spoke. Sorry, Mr. Yang, but it really cannot be done artificially. The weak end of the phone spoke out because there was silence on this end. He realized that when he spoke to the leader, he shouldn't use rhetorical questions. This was a taboo, thinking that Yang Qianli's silence was angry. Got it, Xiao Chen, raise the warning line to prevent accidents, continue to measure the precise tidal force, and see if it's the highest in 39 years. Yang Qianli sighed deeply. Yes. Yang Qianli hung up the phone and looked at the few people who had already stood up but had not moved. It's still quite a while until 4 o'clock, will it? A person still spoke with hope in their eyes, but before they could finish speaking, they shook their head and chuckled self-deprecatingly. What am I thinking? No. Regardless of whether it's possible or not, Lin Li remembers these prophecies about today, Yang Qianli said. Of course, we can let him predict tomorrow to further confirm, but we don't have time. Everyone. The current time is life, and even every second is related to several lives. We have wasted a precious day. Let's take action. If Lin Li is really a trap set by another country, I will try my best to take responsibility for this mistake. But the possibility can already be considered as 0. Where did you leave the mayor? The mayor laughed and cursed, then his smile narrowed and he looked seriously at Yang Qianli. Contact Mr. 83 immediately. Yes. Yang Qianli took out his phone. Yang Qianli. Mr. 83, the prophecy has come true. The other party replied almost instantly, and the answer was so brief that it couldn't be any shorter. 83, received. There are even no punctuation marks. But these short 2 words are like a switch. At this moment, a machine called Donghua Country has begun to operate, at 15:41 in the afternoon. A door was pushed open by someone, and the middle-aged man, who was probably an assistant, even ignored etiquette and shouted to the 2 elderly people who were talking. Mr. 1, Mr. 3, Mr. 83 has a top-secret message transmission and requires immediate processing by up to 10 members. Classification of confidentiality levels in Eastern countries. Public. Sensitive. Secret. Confidential. Top secret. Okay. 2 elderly people who have been carrying the country since the war era stood up. Serious face, resolute gaze. At 16:36 p.m. A very impromptu meeting ended. There were only 11 members, and Mr. 83 was the lowest-ranking person in the room. At 16:39 p.m. The core gear of the Donghua machine began to operate, pulling and moving the whole body. Messages that require top-secret protection can only be transmitted through military radio stations. So, In the encrypted channel of Tianjin military radio, orders began to be issued from it in all directions. Reply to Shuinan City. The top 10 members will be informed that Mr. 1 and Mr. 3 will arrive in Shuinan City tonight. The target information is classified as top secret, codenamed Hope. It is essential to protect Hope and allow the use of all available resources, with the highest treatment. The overall action code for this event is Salvation. Confidentiality level. Top secret. At 16:40 in the afternoon. Telegraph Zone 5. Entering a Level 1 combat readiness state, the combat readiness duty personnel are on duty day and night, and the wireless command network is listening at all times to ensure uninterrupted command. Counting all supplies, evacuating and concealing personnel, weapons, and equipment, immediately preparing for combat, entering a standby state, and stopping all vacations, transfers, and demolitions. The urgent and deafening sound of police sirens echoes in various military regions today. At 16:40 in the afternoon. Telegram to cities in the east. Inventory materials, set a Level 1 combat readiness, and prepare to activate military management status. Telegram to Dongwa grain area. Count the grain reserves, prepare for extraction, plan transportation routes, and allow the use of all available vehicles. Telegraph East Country Oil Depot. Telegraph Dongwa Reservoir. Telegram. On the rapids under the sea, searching for a book garden. www.zhaosuiyuan.com is peaceful. Across the east, there is still a scene of laughter and joy. At 4:30 p.m., it's close to everyone's end of work time, and everyone is looking forward to what they will do and play after work. The weather is perfect, the scenery is perfect, and today is a peaceful and beautiful day. No one perceives the surging undercurrent behind this. Click. Click. The gears that support the operation of the national machinery. It's incredibly massive. But at this moment, it is silent. It thunders silently. On October 17, 2024, at 16:37 p.m., it had been 20 seconds since the electric signal was received from Shuinan City. Lin Li is alone in the room. The door was opened. Are you going to Tianjin City? Lin Li stood up, ready. No, Yang Qianli just shook his head. It's number 1 coming to Shuinan City to see you. Please rest here. Lin Li raised his eyebrows slightly, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He just sat quietly back and nodded. Rest well, if you have any needs, give orders as much as possible. Yang Qianli closed the door. When reporting to Mr. 83, he was ready to take Lin Li to Tianjin City. Soon, Mr. 83 handed over Mr. 1's answer. Let Hope rest in Shuinan City, I'll go see him. Now Hope is more important than anyone else, his safety and thoughts are above all else, more important than all gentlemen. Don't let him travel long distances, he will inevitably feel tired. Protect, Hope, protect. Hope. That gunshot. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On October 17, 2024, at 17:37 p.m., it had been 1 hour since receiving a telegram from Shuinan City. Shuinan City is a closed avenue. Meng Fifan sat on the street, eating boxed meals distributed by the production team, and looking up at the gradually fading sky. I don't know when the sky started, but it gradually became clearer than when I was a child. Meng Fifan finished his boxed lunch 3 times, 5 times, and 2 times. He hopes that today's shooting can go smoothly, so that he can leave work earlier. It's best to let his daughter talk and play games with her when he comes home, even though she hasn't fallen asleep yet. Meng Fifan is 38 years old this year and works as a radio announcer in the production team. Fuck. How could the action be so slow? Stupid. Didn't I ask you to hurry up? My time is precious, how could I waste it on you? As Meng Fifan approached the interior of the set, he heard English screams in his ear. After each scolding, there will be a translator who will specifically translate and shout at the set. Meng Fifan's crew today is directed by foreign director Shijia, and a film he once shot was nominated for an Oscar. Although this is a film mainly shot within the eastern region, the main cast and the staff of the directing team are mostly foreigners. The highest number of East Country characters in the film are only the second female and third male, and all other characters are dragon sets. Shijia's attitude towards Eastern actors and staff is very bad, as if Eastern people naturally owe him 1 million, and he always has a sense of superiority. Because Meng Fifan can understand foreign languages, he knows that Shijia often speaks insulting words in foreign languages in a low voice. Now Shijia is cursing the lower-level staff. Director, is the scale of this scene. The female World War II approached Shijia nervously and tentatively said, "Do you have any objections? If you don't want to act, then you don't need to do it. I'll stop immediately and look for other actors. After all, there are so many people who want to act. Do you really treat yourself like something?" Shijia didn't wait for the other person to finish speaking and cursed angrily. The already fearful second daughter immediately waved her hand and said she had nothing left. "Get out of here. Go change your clothes. Do you still want me to wait for you here?" Bichi. Shijia threw the script directly to the ground, looking at his eyes as if he had intended to fall onto the face of the second female character. I'm sorry. The second female, holding back her tears, bent down to pick up the script on the ground and ran away. They are really all cheats. We must set up a chaste memorial archway. What can we do to sleep less? If we don't want to sleep with me, we can sleep with beggars. Meng Fifan heard Shijia's broken thoughts when he approached with his equipment. Meng Fifan clenched his fist slightly, but in the end, he released it. Director Shijia. There's a situation. Just then, a man ran towards Shijia and said out of breath. What's the matter? Who the hell allowed it to happen again? The shooting is about to start. Damn it. Shijia wanted to hit the man with his equipment. There is an Eastern army. There is an Eastern army outside the field, asking us to make way. The man pointed in a somewhat panicked direction as he approached. What? Are you kidding? There is an army. Why did the army come to our theater? I didn't apply for the shooting of those equipment either. Is it another his mother crew coming to rob the place? I'm already here. Shijia shouted. Anyway, you can go and take a look, the man just said. Damn it. Useless thing. Shijia cursed and followed the man away. Meng Fanfan looked at Shijia's back and silently put down the equipment in his hand, following him as well. Sleeping trough. When Meng Fifan followed Shijia through the corner of the street, he saw a scene that made him subconsciously speak out the essence of Chinese culture. I saw a green torrent spreading on the street, with a camouflage military vehicle leading the way, and behind it were armored personnel carriers. Although the military vehicle leading the way has stopped moving forward. Ahead of it, there are a large number of scenes and equipment set up on the set, and now soldiers are trying to move or dismantle them. But the personnel carriers behind them continue to have soldiers carrying firearms getting off from above and standing on both sides of the road, staring firmly ahead. The intricate and continuous steps of the soldiers, like drumming on Meng Fifan's heart, made him particularly anxious. These faces, these grandeur, are the true army. Meng Fanfan was 30.8 years old, and for a small part of his life, the Eastern Kingdom was still in an era of war. The momentum of the army, he will never forget it. What's going on now? What happened? Why did these troops suddenly appear here? Is it necessary to surround terrorists in Shuainan City? But I have never heard such news before. At the front passenger seat of the military vehicle leading the way, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes like a knife, dressed in military uniform, now scanned all the people who appeared, including Meng Fifan, with a cold gaze. Do eyes like knives really exist? Meng Fifan only knew about this question when he just looked at each other, and he felt the blood all over his body stagnate. This officer must have participated in war. I must have killed the enemy. While Meng Fanfan was still daydreaming, Shijie had already rushed forward with the translator. In his eyes, there was not much fear, but simply anger. Fuck. What are you doing? It took a lot of time to fix these things. That's very expensive. If you break it like this, can you afford it? Damn it. You all stop it. Shijie roared angrily. However, the soldiers in front of him who were dismantling seemed to have not heard at all, and were carrying out their dismantling tasks on their own. Shijie punched angrily. But before his fist hit the target soldier's cheek, he was directly controlled in reverse by the opponent's basic grasping technique, half kneeling on the ground, and his hands were instantly clamped. It was just an instant, his hand bones were misaligned, causing him to scream uncontrollably in pain. The soldier turned his head and looked at his captain with questioning eyes. Let go first. Are you the person in charge here? Are you applying for this section of the road to be used for filming? The officer stepped forward and said to Shijie without emotion. Yeah. Fuck. Do you know what you're doing? Are you the leader of these people? Hurry up and tell them to stop. That curtain cannot be dismantled. Reconstruction is very troublesome. I must take you to court. Shijie just glanced at the officer and continued to insult the soldiers who were being demolished by searching for the Shuyuan website www.zhaoshuyuan.com. Didn't you receive the afternoon notice from the Shuainan government? The officer said expressionlessly. What kind of bullshit notification? No. Are you people from the East bullying like this? Shijie continued to curse, but his assistant immediately stepped forward and grabbed his arm, whispering. Director Shijie, the government of Shuainan City sent a notice an hour ago that our permission to close the road section has been temporarily revoked, and they will bear the losses. They asked us to immediately open the road. I informed you, but you only cursed for a while and said, don't worry. What's the reason for temporary rejection? An application submitted 1 week in advance is also allowed, so there's no reason for temporary rejection. Compensation for losses. Can they afford it? What I want to take pictures of is the environment at this time point. It seems you have received the notification. The officer frowned slightly and then coldly continued, so please immediately clear the way for us to pass and take over. I won't let it. Can't you take a detour? Or is there only one road in your eastern country? Shijie continued to curse. Yeah, can't you take a detour? The foreign staff accompanying them also gained confidence and started shouting along with their director. The street entrance was suddenly chaotic and noisy. The officer frowned slightly. He was not involved in this possible farce. I just took the pitch-black reflection of the dusk glow from the soldier next to me, touch. All the noise at the street corner has disappeared. I have given you 3 warnings. You are listening at novel full.audio. Shijie was a bit stunned, looking at the officer in front of him with his hand facing the sky, and suddenly fell silent. The pistol in his hand was emitting white smoke. Did you shoot? This Easterner actually shot in front of him. Now is the second warning. Please immediately clear the way for us to pass and take over. The officer who fired the gun remained expressionless, but said calmly. Fear only appeared for a moment at the sound of the gun, and soon disappeared from Shijie's eyes. Who are you scaring, Easterner? Shooting would make me scared. I've heard so many gunshots in my own country. Do you think I'm your cowardly and unfree Easterner? Shijie's curse grew louder and louder. He has been in the East for so long and is confident that he has some understanding of the East. However, not everyone has the courage of Shijie, and the staff behind him have a somewhat stiff expression. I feel like these Eastern soldiers are not joking. At least tell us what you're going to do. The staff's voice no longer had the same momentum as before. Military action, no comment, the officer said calmly, slowly lowering his hand holding the gun towards Shijie. Fuck. Do you really think I'm a scared person? I'm from the Eagle Country and I'm protected by the Eagle Country. I don't know how much stronger than your Eastern Country. Do you dare to shoot me? Do you have the courage? Come on, shoot me in the chest. I won't let it go today. Shijie's face turned red, and he bravely stepped forward, aligning his chest with the officer's muzzle. He tiptoed and pressed his forehead against the officer's gun, spitting uncontrollably. Meng Fifen's heart stopped slightly as he watched from the side. What should I do, touch? While Meng Fifen was anxiously thinking about countermeasures, his brain froze because another gunshot rang out. No hesitation. Director Shijie. Shijie stumbled backwards and fell to the ground, while his entourage immediately stepped forward in fear and called out his name. I saw Shijie's chest, his clothes were completely shattered, and there was also a red and swollen wound on his skin. A bullet, stained with some blood, rolled down from it. Wait, how did the warhead roll out? Looking at Shijie lying limp on the ground, the officer's expression remained unchanged. After handing over the pistol to the soldier beside him, he pulled out his own matching gun from his waist. Click. This is the sound of a handgun with its safety removed. The officer once again aimed the pitch-black muzzle at Shijie, this time still at his chest. This is the third and final warning. Please immediately clear the way for us to pass and take over. His words remained calm from beginning to end. Meng Fanfan remembered. This is a 3-time warning system. The first time is an empty gun, the second time is an empty shell, and the third time is a live ammunition. There are 2 types of empty bullets, the first one is without a bullet, and the second one is with a rubber or wood bullet. When a handgun fires this type of bullet, its power range can only be about half a meter from the muzzle. But Shijie insisted on getting close, that's why the clothes broke. Shijie regained his thoughts from his daze, looked at the muzzle in front of him, covered his chest, and realized that he had not really been shot. He forced himself to stand up calmly and said, hee, I said, you Easterners only dare to scare people, not really shoot. But I won't forgive you for this shot just now. You are waiting for my country to impose sanctions on you. You all have to pay for my psychological loss. This shot is also scaring me, isn't it? The officer's face remained expressionless, as if he was too lazy to react to Shijie, who was working hard against the outside world. He just looked at him quietly. Look at him with the muzzle. When speaking again, 3. Time seems to be stagnant at this moment, and the silent gap in the countdown is particularly long. I will definitely shoot. This idea appeared in Meng Fifen's heart, and he had already felt the officer's attitude. He had never changed his expression from beginning to end. The officer's gaze was written with a sentence. Want to know the answer? You can give it a try. Meng Fanfan watched this scene and surprisingly wanted to clap his hands and cheer, feeling greatly pleased. 2. I'll let it go. Damn it. I'll let it go. But give us some time, let's dismantle it ourselves. Shijie finally couldn't bear the pressure brought by the officer. He, who also saw the officer's determination, didn't dare to wait for a moment and just avoided it, gritted his teeth and said. There is no room for bargaining, the officer said. 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, let our own people come and we can all dismantle it. If you don't understand, it will definitely take more time. We are the most efficient. Shijie's eyes rolled and he said. The officer closed his eyes and then opened them, nodding and saying, okay, the countdown starts now, only 5 minutes. Then he waved his hand and all the soldiers immediately returned to their ranks, staring at Shijie. The gaze carries a profound meaning. Let's go. Shijie shouted to all the staff. Director, it can't be dismantled in 5 minutes. Meng Fifan, who followed them away, heard them communicating in a foreign language. I simply disgusted them for 5 minutes, and then let them move by themselves. Let these guys do the hard work for us. Damn it. Dare to bully me like this. Take a small price first. Shijie said maliciously. Meng Fifan sneered at the words. Is the director's IQ threshold so low? At 17:44 p.m., it was already 4:30 p.m. before the agreed time with Shijie. Shijie walked back to the officer with a light smile and provocation on his face and said, I'm sorry, Brother Donghua. I miscalculated the time, so you guys should help me move. I'll bear the cost of the miscalculation. The officer nodded and returned to the car. His palm pointed towards the sky and then fell heavily forward. The engine of the vehicle roared simultaneously at this moment, and in the next second, all armored vehicles immediately started. What kind of scenery and equipment? Find the Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com in front of the car, everything crumbles and crumbles. What do you mean? Shijie retreated to the side of the road, and when he saw the armored vehicle violently leading the way, he suddenly stepped forward again. What are you doing? But this time, the officer refused to even give a glance. Shijie gritted his teeth and rushed to the front of the vehicle, intending to block it with his own body. But the car still hasn't slowed down, even at any point. The driver just glanced at himself, as if he hadn't seen anything. Unlike the expressionless officer from beginning to end, Shijie could see the mockery in the driver's eyes. Watching himself getting closer and closer to the front of the car, Shijie, feeling disheartened, dodged to the side. He watched as the armored vehicles broke through the roadblocks layer by layer, and a large number of soldiers came down from above to violently clean up the ruins, their hearts dripping with blood. These are all expensive equipment of their own. Hello, a voice came from the side. Shijie turned his head irritably and glared angrily at the other person. It was a soldier. What's good about it? Get out of here. Next second. Shijie's cheeks had a new intimate contact with the dirty ground. Hello, as you are suspected of deliberately obstructing military operations, we are temporarily depriving you of your personal freedom. The Shuainan City Police Department will send someone to pick you up later, said the soldier who captured Shijie, and then added, this is also one of the costs of miscalculating. You're not qualified. What are you talking about? Ah. The soldier's hand exerted a slight force, and Shijie's words were interrupted by his own screams. This is the East Country, no one is qualified for us. I'll notify you. You no longer have the qualification to call out. I see you've been unhappy for a long time. October 10th. Salvation Action, Official. Start. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Shijie's followers did not defend him against injustice. It's not that they are disloyal. But it's because all of them are in the same state as Shijie at this moment. All have been taken down. Now a group of faces are pressed against the ground. Jokers. Meng Fifan smiled as he watched the smooth scene all over his body. No, it's jokers. Shijie looked up and noticed Meng Fifan, but didn't dare to shout anymore. He just glared angrily at the other person, his gaze fixed on Meng Fifan's work card, seeming to be threatening. I'm in dire straits and even threatening others. Besides, I really don't want to do it anymore. Meng Fifan took off the work permit from his chest and smashed it onto Shijie's face, turning around and leaving. I'm going back to see my daughter. He had a premonition that something had happened in Shuainan City. It's time for me to go home and accompany my daughter. Meng Fanfan thought for a moment, then ran back and asked the soldier, can I punch him? Sorry, it's not possible in front of me, the soldier said in a warm voice, appearing particularly gentle towards the people of the East. Meng Fifan has some regrets. Then the soldier turned around. Meng Fifan's eyes lit up. Ah. On October 17, 2024, at 9:07 p.m. 3 hours and 23 minutes have passed since the road was opened. A plane is slowly landing in the night sky of Shuainan City. At the landing airport, only the crew members were meticulous in their actions and there was no noise. The airport here is very spacious, but the buildings are plain and unremarkable, lacking the gorgeous beauty that a big city airport should have. Moreover, from a high altitude, there are no flickering neon lights or traffic flow around the airport at night. But if one can see clearly through the night, they will find a large number of fighter jets parked inside the airport. Because this is a military airport in Shuainan City. The parking runway has long been opened up, and a whole group of ground crew members are on standby, just waiting for the landing of this aircraft. There are even 2 fighter jets hovering in the air, escorting it. In fact, the number of crew members on this large plane also exceeds that of passengers. There are only 2 passengers. But no one would find it strange, nothing else, because these 2 passengers are Mr. 1 and Mr. 3. Even such a battle is still too rudimentary. If it weren't for the urgency of the situation, the scene would be even grander than it is now. The plane landed and stopped smoothly, the cabin door was opened, and the 2 elderly people steadily disembarked in the moonlight bath. Respectful salute. The leading officer shouted with all his might. Dang, including the ground crew, everyone raised their hands in a neat and uniform standard salute, and the sound of their clothes rubbing against each other became uniform, like a dormant red dragon rising and roaring in the darkness. The old man in charge nodded at the officer, but did not speak. Instead, he asked the old man behind him to step forward and ask, Major General Lin. Here. NNE looked at number 3 with some excitement. This is number 1 and number 3. Mr. 1 is the top of the East. Mr. 3 is the top military officer. In the past wars in the East, there were several great victories with the shadow of the third strategist. Report to Mr. 1 and Mr. 3. The road to the Shuainan political building has been opened up, and vehicles, accompanying personnel, and troops are ready to depart at any time. He exclaimed loudly. He actually doesn't know what happened until now. Everyone here at the airport actually doesn't know. This is not surprising. Because they are soldiers, they only need to obey orders. But Mr. N and Mr. E feel that the peace that has only been maintained in the East for more than 20 years may collapse. Otherwise, how could it be so sudden and mysterious? I don't know if the future will be better or worse. But no matter what the situation is, He is very certain that he will be at the forefront. Charge ahead of all the people. Okay, it's not too late. Time is precious, let's set off now. Number 3 nodded, showing a hint of concern, and looked towards the urban area of Shuainan City. At 21:42 p.m. Shuainan City, City Building. Due to the remote location of the military airport, it was not until now that numbers 1 and 3 have arrived at the building. On the way to the lounge where Lin Li is located, number 1 and number 3 reviewed the physical evidence related to the prophecy again. I'm afraid this matter cannot be taken seriously. The door of the room was pushed open, and the first and third finally saw this so-called reborn young man. Black hair and black pupils are expressions of the Eastern bloodline. The young man's gaze is incredibly firm. When the other person looks at him, he immediately stands up and politely bows slightly, saying, "Hello, are you Mr. 1 and Mr. 3? Yes, are you just hoping? I'm number 1, number 1 approached with a gentle inquiry. Lin Li was already aware of the fact that his code name was named Hope, but upon hearing this, he still felt a bit embarrassed and scratched his head, saying in a casual tone. Gentlemen, why don't you call me Lin Li or Xiao Lin? I'm really a bit embarrassed to call this Hope code name. Of course we will try our best to meet your requirements. Then, based on my age, I will call you Xiaolin. Number 1 pulled Lin Li to his seat and said gently. However, in the outside world, it's best for you, Xiaolin, not to disclose too much information about yourself for now. I understand, Mr. 1. Lin Li nodded and then took out a piece of paper. These are some of my prophecies about tomorrow that can once again prove my identity. Xiaolin, since I have come here, I actually believe in you. Let's put aside tomorrow's prophecy for now. Could you please tell me the detailed information of the era of natural disasters? Yihao took the paper, carefully gathered it, and then said to Lin Li. Of course, not a problem. In fact, during the time you rushed over, I have been organizing relevant information. Lin Li took out 2 printed copies of the archive paper. Number 1 and number 3 took the paper and only read the first one. Their expression became extremely solemn when they found the book garden www.zhaosuiyuan.com. They didn't continue reading and glanced at each other. There is a specialization in the craft industry. These things will be more efficiently utilized when they are in the hands of others. But they have something to do now. In this room with only 3 people, where the door was heavily guarded, Mr. 1 and Mr. 3 suddenly stood up. Before Lin Li could react, 2 elderly people representing the soul of the country bowed deeply to him. Mr. 1, Mr. 3. Don't do this, get up quickly. How can I bear this? Lin Li, who had a reaction, immediately stepped forward to help the 2 elderly people. No, Lin Li, you can afford it, said number 1. This bow represents our gratitude to you on behalf of the 40,000 people of the East. The fate of Donghua has been redeemed because of you. Thank you for making the effort to let the country know and believe in this news. The words fell, and the 2 elderly people bowed again. After a brief silence, Lin Li just smiled and said, "This is what I want to do, this is what I should do, this is what I must do. I hope only the tragic future I have experienced will not happen again. I hope to protect more people in the East. I hope that the era of natural disasters is no longer the end of the world." Faced with numerous heartfelt words, number 1 and number 3 are still bowing. So this bow is also what we should do. Next, let's leave it to us. Number 1 and number 3 straightened their bodies. A phone call was dialed, and number 1 issued the only command: the salvation action has officially begun.